Today, I just want to have some fun in my kitchen. I want to recreate a recipe that we make at work. And I thought, what a better opportunity than a slow weekend day and making some baked goods. And it's summertime, and one of the things that is so great about summer is just everything that's available. And so for me, I was thinking, like, what would be a great summertime dish to share with you all today? That dish for me, that baked good for me, is our lemon and polenta cupcake. This is topped with a vanilla buttercream and fresh blueberries with a little bit of micro basil. This recipe is really straightforward and I love to make it, so why don't we get started? The only specialty equipment is you do need either a hand mixer or a stand mixer to whip your buttercream. Other than that, this is pretty much just like a one bowl kind of recipe, which, you know, I love. If you like this video or want to see more, please hit like and subscribe so you never miss an upcoming video. To make our cupcake batter, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to take the zest of 1 lemon and your sugar, and you're going to combine this together in your mixing bowl, and you're just going to rub the lemon zest into the sugar to impart the essential oils of the lemon zest into the sugar to help infuse the sugar with that flavor so it becomes delightfully lemony. If you don't like lemon, omit it. Next, I'm going to crack in our eggs, and I'm going to give this a whisk really quick just to break the egg up and get this incorporated into our sugar and our lemon mix. Now, the base recipe for today's cupcakes does not have any dairy in it. It actually uses oil as the fat. So you could make this dairy-free if you sub out the dairy yogurt or sour cream with a plant-based cocoa yogurt. That is a perfect swap for this. If you're making this for somebody who's plant-based or dairy-free, that they can enjoy this cupcake too. I'm going to go ahead and add in our sour cream and our neutral oil. I would recommend like a cold pressed canola oil or grapeseed oil. You don't want to impart any flavor into your cake batter. Last but not least, I'm going to add in our vanilla, and then I'm going to add in my dry ingredients. And for our dry ingredients today, we are working with a little bit of kosher salt. We have some fine ground cornmeal. You can use regular polenta. I like a finer grind on my polenta for this, just so it's not super gritty. And then lastly, I have some all-purpose flour. And I've mixed this just until incorporated, so that way I don't end up with a tough cupcake at the end of the day. I have something very tender. I'm gonna go ahead and scoop these into my muffin tin. This recipe makes about 12 cupcakes, and I'm going to pop that into a 350-degree oven, and it's gonna bake for about 15 to 20 minutes or until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. All right, let's go ahead and pop these into our 350-degree oven. So while our cupcakes are in the oven baking, let's go ahead and prepare our buttercream. I have some room temperature butter. For a super smooth buttercream, you definitely need to make sure you have room temperature butter. I also have a little bit of vanilla bean paste and of course powdered sugar. This is an American buttercream, so there's no tempering of any kind of meringue here. This is a pretty straightforward buttercream. All things considered, this is a great beginner-friendly buttercream as well. First and foremost, we're going to beat our butter. You're just really beating this butter until it gets nice and pale yellow and you whip some air into it. Now to our mixing bowl with our butter, I'm gonna add in just a little bit of vanilla bean paste, not too much. And I'm gonna start with a little bit of powdered sugar. You wanna make sure your powdered sugar is sifted so that way there are no clumps. I go low and slow with powdered sugar. The last thing I want is like a big plume of powdered sugar in my face and all over my kitchen. So starting on low. All right, I'm gonna add a little bit more. I'm gonna scrape down the sides. I have as like a bit of an insurance policy too, a bit of milk to one side. So in the event that my buttercream is a little on the thicker side, or it's getting a little hard to mix, I can just add a couple of milk and it'll help loosen up my mixture. Now it's starting to look like frosting. can already tell that I'm probably gonna need a little bit of milk, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of a little dabble do ya here. Should be the last of the powdered sugar. What I will say is that you want to beat this until you have a very light mixture with lots of air incorporated into it, and the frosting in and of itself is very, very pale. That's kind of a good indicator of like the amount of air that's in it. American buttercream gets a bad rap for being overly sweet, but if you have some patience and whip all that air into it, then you're gonna end up with a nice light frosting. And a good indicator as to whether or not your frosting is done is whether or not it's kind of leaving these trails in the bowl. That's a great way for you to kind of understand like where it's at in terms of its consistency. This is the consistency you're looking for. So good. It's light, it's airy, but it holds its shape. I'm gonna pop our frosting into a piping bag fitted with a star tip. If you don't have a piping bag, don't worry about it. Use a large like Ziploc bag. Push all the frosting down into one of the corners, snip the tip when you are ready to start frosting. If you want something more of like a stylized pattern. Otherwise, you can use an offset spatula or a butter knife to frost your cupcakes. It'll look rustic and homemade, and that's what home baking is all about. So good. It's been about 20 minutes. Our timer just went off. Let me pull our cupcakes out so we can take a look at them and get them cooling so we can frost them. Our cupcakes are nice and cool. They've been cooling for the last couple of hours. To frost the cupcakes, what I always recommend doing is that if you are working with a piping bag or a Ziploc or something of that nature, is to use a tall glass like I have here, and you can just rest your piping bag in it, and it just helps ensure that everything kind of just stays in place and you're not having frosting kind of get all over your countertop. So that's my first tip with working with frosting any kind of cupcake with this kind of mechanism. The other is you always want to push from the top, never close to the nozzle. This just makes sure that you don't have frosting that comes out the other end. Just make sure whenever you do start piping your cupcakes that you are working with room temperature buttercream, nothing that's coming out of the refrigerator. Your buttercream will be the easiest to work with at room temp. However, if you wanted to make the buttercream in advance, you totally can. You can make it the night before, a couple days before, and then just transfer it to your piping bag. And so then that way you can just bring the bag out a couple of hours before you're gonna frost your cupcakes, and then they'll be ready to go. If you're planning to just use like a offset spatula or a butter knife, just make sure that, again, you pull out your frosting if you've made it in advance before you're going to frost everything. Again, just to make sure that it's at the right consistency for easy spreadability. To garnish, I'm just going to pop on a couple of blueberries. Now, we garnish these at work with micro basil. My only recommendation is only cut your basil right before you're ready to serve your cupcakes, because then your the edges of your basil won't go black. You wanna give these a try? I wanna give these a try. Let's give these a try. So good. Because you have a very sweet frosting, having a very lightly sweetened cake actually works really, really well for this combo. And then you have that lift in that lemon, that sharpness from the lemon that cuts through the creaminess, the sweetness from the frosting, and then the freshness from the basil, from the blueberry. It all just works so well. If you like this recipe and want to see more, please do hit like and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upcoming video. So that way you can see us here every Sunday when we upload a new vid. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today in my kitchen. It's been a blast. I'll see you next time. Bye!